Good morning, everyone. I am glad to welcome you today to this webinar organized by EuroACE, the European Alliance of Companies for Energy Efficiency in Buildings. I am Hélène Sibilo, and I work at EuroACE as a Senior EU Affairs Manager, and today I will guide you through this webinar as a moderator. Before we start, just a short announcement on housekeeping rules. Next slide, please. As a participant, you are kindly asked to remain muted for the whole duration of the webinar. We also ask you to not turn on your camera, and only the speakers and myself will stay unmuted. After the speaker's presentation of about 15 minutes, a Q&A session of around 20 to 25 minutes will take place. During this Q&A session, but also already during the speaker's presentation, you can type in your questions in the GoToMeeting chat box. Please address your question to everyone in this chat box, as we like it to be transparent. During the Q&A session, I will pick up the questions and read them to the speaker. If time does not allow to cover all questions, they will be forwarded to the speaker, and there will be a later response in writing. Yes, the PowerPoint presentation, the recording of the webinar, and the questions will be shared with you in due course. Now I pass the floor to Julie Kestrup, our president, for the formal introduction to this webinar.
Good morning, everyone. Just a second, I just have some slight, there you go. So my name is Julie Kestrup. I'm the head of public affairs at Danfoss, but I'm also the president of EuroACE. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge that we made it to Friday. And I don't know about the rest of you, but my week has actually been very, very busy. And one reason is all the excellent online discussions and webinars that are now popping up all over the place. We're now at the end of week 3 of semi-lockdown here in Brussels. And I personally do miss being out and about and meeting and discussing with people such as those on the line in person. Having said that, I do think this online format has its merits too. And the most important one is that we can attract people from all over Europe. More than 90 of you have signed up to be with us this morning. And as with the other 2 seminars in this mini-series, we've had a really good mix of participants, and we look forward to hearing your questions and your thoughts in the chat box. This morning, we're talking about the ecosystem of the renovation wave. And that's a particularly important question as far as I'm concerned, because the Green Deal sets out a lot of different initiatives and levers. And in this particular mini-series, we focus on the renovation wave. But it's by making sure that we're integrating this renovation wave with all the other initiatives and levers that we're creating a framework that overall will push us in the right ambitious direction. And that's much easier said than done. We know that. Those of us who's worked in Brussels for years have also talked for years about the need to better connect initiatives across not just different DGs, but also within the same DG. And I'm looking forward to hearing Celine's thoughts this morning on how, from our perspective, we see this work going on. Celine, over to you.
Yes, hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for this little bug. I'm Céline Carré. I'm head of public affairs for Saint-Gobain, vice president in EuroACE, also leading the working group on energy efficiency policies. Next slide, please. Many of you will know EuroACE. We were founded more than 20 years ago, and we are the active voice for companies delivering products, services, and solutions for energy efficiency in buildings. And we do that to make the best conducive possible framework for energy efficiency markets. Next slide. We gather 12 members and over 200,000 employees, 900 production facilities. And for those who know us, we are unique in Brussels because we undertake a cross-sectoral representation, and the cross-sectoral voice in expressing a position is valued among our audience. Next slide. We obviously believe that energy efficiency is the best cost-effective methodology to tackle a number of challenges that the European member states face today, among which climate change, but also we believe it's one of the best drivers to create jobs and local growth. And as a fact-based organization, we also undertake to share multiple benefits on what it means for people, for the health and well-being. Next slide. A little word about the Renovate Europe campaign that EuroACE helped to launch in 2011, and which is a communication campaign meant to activate and increase the awareness around energy renovation and get higher political prioritization. Next slide. We undertake also within Renovate Europe to showcase best practices, not only enough to demonstrate the macroeconomic figures, but to demonstrate technical feasibility, the economic viability, and the multiple benefits of renovation project. And you see here an example of what happened in the Parliament alongside our last Renovate Europe Day last October. Next slide. For today, I'd like to talk to you about the ecosystem of the renovation wave, or maybe better, how the renovation wave can help us create the right ecosystem for renovation in Europe. So I'll go back to what we know about the renovation wave. I'll introduce the notion of ecosystem, and I will look into how the renovation wave can help create the missing links for a functioning renovation ecosystem. Next slide. So, what do we know about the renovation wave? This is a project, that's a concept that was launched just before Christmas, at a time when it was cold and dark, and this is how I imagine the renovation wave. We know that it will be and it is a core concern within the European Green Deal, which is the new recipe for growth of this new European Commission. And as the Commission rightly put it, it has to address both energy efficiency, affordability, but it should be a joint up project between the EU and member states. And it should cover all of their buildings, public and private. So this is what it is. Next slide. But looking a bit more into the detail, we have a number of elements. So we know that the European Commission intends to work on a number of drivers that definitely have a role to play to create this renovation wave, such as energy pricing, such as digitalization, enforcement of the actual buildings directive, the EPBD, the link with the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the long-term climate proofing. They will also mean to launch a renovation platform where financing and investment into energy renovation should be at the center. And we know also that this is going to go together with initiative of the European Investment Bank, the EIB, that has launched a renovation initiative and will dedicate overall amount of funding to climate projects. We also note that the segment approach, or at least a few segments, have been flagged with this renovation wave announcement: schools, hospitals, and social housing. Now, I wonder if this is actually in itself enough to make a wave and to kick off our renovation market, which are only 1% per year. Next slide, please. So this is why I'd like to look into the concept of ecosystem, and you have here a very generic definition of the word from Wikipedia. It's not meant to be scientifically elaborated, but to give you a flavor of the idea. We're talking an ecosystem as a community of living organisms, and those living organisms are interdependent, meaning that the different parts are relying on each other and how each other develop themselves. And I think here the key question for me is to think about renovation and our policies with the following question: have they been designed in such a way that they engage the whole spectrum of actors directly and indirectly? Next slide, please. So I've started to look at building renovation and what we have at hand from a European perspective. to think about whether what we have here is a functioning ecosystem. And here you see more of a matrix and an ecosystem. I've grouped them through several pillars. So you see here elements related to policies, from targets, long-term strategy, renovation programs, both at EU and national levels. You see here a number of tools. Not all of them have been fully deployed, and we do not know exactly their full potential because they've not necessarily been developed in connections with other elements. We have a number of market drivers. We know that most of the solutions for renovation and energy efficiency are at hand, but they've not yet been developed into sufficiently innovative business models, although we have a few of them. We have the role of financing, the Smart Finance for Smart Building initiative, the gigantic work carried by EFIC over the past year to enable and to encourage finance to get to grips with the renovation business. So we have a number of elements, also R&D project, be it from national or at EU level, H2020 project, and then other drivers. But the question here is whether the links between those elements grouped in category, but also here horizontally, have been thought through. Those interlinkages are crucial to develop the renovation market and to reach our 2050 ambition to move possibly towards 3% renovation per year and to get deeper renovation. And those interlinkages have not necessarily been thought through when designing policies. So looking a bit further, next slide, please. I would raise a few questions. For example, do our long-term strategy really contribute to the 2030 targets and beyond to the 2050 climate goals? Do the renovation programs contribute well enough to long-term renovation strategies? Within the tools, how do our energy performance certificates link with building renovation passport, and are building passport linked with trigger point? Not necessarily. Also, I see not necessarily the good links between the new business models and the renovation program, in the sense that the learnings are not necessarily integrated and not capitalized on. The scaling up is a big issue here. And in terms of skills, we can honestly wonder whether we develop skills in the market across the value chain for what's needed to reach our long-term targets. Do skills fit in well with renovation programs? Do they fit in well with the supply of our solutions and offer? Not necessarily. So next slide, please. So in the next slide, I'd like to elaborate on enabling links that the renovation wave can create to foster a better renovation ecosystem. And it has to do with aligning ambitions, driving scalability, driving demands, and integrating skills. This is not exhaustive. We could find many more linkages, and we can discuss this beyond this webinar for sure. Next slide, please. So in terms of aligning ambition, the purpose here, and what you can see in this slide and in the next slide on the left hand side shows what is at hand. I'm not saying that this is perfect, but this is what's on the table. So and the right column, the right box suggests ways forward. So what do we have in terms of ambition? We have a target, but it's non-binding. It's at 32.5% for energy efficiency by 2030. We know it's below the potential. For buildings, we have an emerging 2050 vision articulated in the long-term renovation strategies, but it's not strongly anchored into the policy tools. And I dare to wonder whether what we have at hand at building level is designed to contribute to those goals. We have concepts such as measured renovation, which may be useful, but at the same time limitative in terms of suggesting a way that each building should be at some point climate proof. We have cost optimality. We can wonder about the relevance of the concept in the context of 2050 climate neutrality. And most of EU countries have incentive-based system. Is it enough? We can honestly wonder. So I would pitch that for 2050, we need to raise the target and the ambition for energy efficiency, it needs to be binding, it needs to be built on relevant modeling tools with a relevant discount rate for energy efficiency. The building's contribution not only to the 2030 target, but to our 2050 emission reduction goals should be better articulated. They should be better visible to anyone in the value chain and in the decision-making process. And for that, we need to have better milestones for 2030, 2040. They are emerging probably in the coming long-term renovation strategies that were due for the 10th of March. Yet they are probably not strong enough to encourage the continuity of our policies towards those goals. And then at building level, the compatibility of our renovation with 2050 targets should be encouraged, and finance should reward those renovation that's climate proofing needs to have better linkages in finance. Finally, and I will come back to that, we need to give a better thinking and role and action to minimum energy performance standards. Next slide, please. So on the scalability, and this is coming back quite often in our discussions, the challenge here that we have here is that we have a number of policies, programs, nice schemes, good description of them among various documents, good pilot programs from Horizon 2020 or live programs, and even emerging city approaches, for example, those led by the project Build Upon Square H2020 project. The question is about the replicability and about the integration of the good outcomes into policymaking, being soft law or hard law. We do not have that yet fully integrated. And this is why I believe that this renovation wave can help in that context. First, we need to link better the mapping of our building stock to the design of policies by segments. And per segment, we should evolve towards dedicated milestones, indicators, and those indicators need to cover market preparedness and value chain mobilization. The carrots and stick dimension needs to be envisaged per segments. Carrots and sticks means to be able to evolve both incentives and more regulatory dimension of policy making. Within this, the EU Open Platform for Renovation could have a dedicated role in activating an impactful best practice sharing in a very targeted manner, because the people busy with renovation in different member states do not have the time necessarily to access this wonderful knowledge that has been made available in nice reports. So we need to anchor that into practice. Next slide, please. Demand driver, also a big topic because we have low renovation rates. So just to look back into what we know and what we have for driving demands. So a quick reminder is that comfort and health are the biggest driver for renovation yet. Our policies and tools are not necessarily taking this into considerations. People are getting a bit better aware about energy consumption via the EPCs, but this is not enough. We know this. The uptake of incentive-based programs is patchy across the member states, and we know that the absorption issues are limited the impact of EU cohesion programs. There are very good examples of one-stop shops, and I came across the project Innovate recently. We may have the opportunity to talk to you further about it. But the big issue is the dynamic here, for those one-stop shop to remain beyond the project program duration. To drive demand, we also have nice experience with industrialized renovation, for example, Energiesprong, and again, city-led programs. But this is not good enough to boost demand. So I would argue here that we need to envisage different tools together and with a good thinking on how they interact one with each other. So trigger points have not been used enough. Trigger points is the enabling role of performing renovation where something else is happening anyhow in a building. So we can consider that it is a missed opportunity if this is not happening when there is a change in a building or an extension or another work or a change in the lift and so on and so on. We need to be much more forceful with the trigger points together with the targets per segments. And building renovation passport would deliver a much bigger impact if we have trigger points and if we have minimum energy performance standards in place that will enable not only consumers, home owners, building owner, but also professionals, finance, and other workers to work with common goals. So the visibility of what comes next in the legislation has been too much left aside so far. So we need to align here. And another big block, I would say, has to do with liaison and coordination on the ground. So for renovation projects, we know that the difficulties for people is the complexity of the works, as well as so technical, the financing aspects, and we know coordinating function to emerge in our markets for a project preparation to go faster, for the delivery to be easier, but also for the quality of the project to be aligned with longer term targets. And the project building capacity, I know some very good example exists, but this is something on which we need to focus in order to catalyze finance. It was mentioned also by Hélène in our last webinar. The next slide. So the integration of skills, I think that it is also very important in light of what we know, that solutions exist but are not necessarily applied in the market. Professionals in the market may know their field, and implementing renovation measures is not necessarily done in a coordinated manner. So, and most renovation being step by step, and we know that deep renovation only happens sporadically at a rate of 0.2%. This has to do with shortage of skills, but also project management and multidisciplinarity in the sector. So in order to move there, I think we need to have a fully fledged strategies on skills. So to not only better cover climate and energy efficiency first principles in faculties, but also to make apprenticeships much more attractive among our young people. Then along the value chain, it's very important to undertake further training. As the recent Joint Research Center report on renovation rates demonstrates, it is not necessarily the people who are the closest to the consumer that are the best placed to advise them on what to do. And this is a common challenge for moving on our targets. Implementing holistic building renovation, moving towards also prefab and industrialization should be a key focus. And I would call for links to be done with the digital agenda to support the renovation wave, together with reskilling workers in the just transition. The integration of circularity is also an important dimension, and there the skills can help. The next slide. So I move here to our conclusion. So I've shown you a few of those enabling links. For sure, we can create many more, and that could be a useful exercise to do before September. But all of what I would like to tell you is that the European Framework for Renovation can certainly become a better and a truly proceeding we aware, and we are about how different people and tools interact with each other. We need to understand tendencies. Yes, and this is what I hope the renovation wave can undertake together with all of you as actors at European and national levels and with our institution. And with this, I thank you for your attention and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Céline, for your presentation. Now we're turning towards the Q&A session, and we have about 15 minutes. There are already a few questions in the chat box. Don't hesitate to continue typing in your questions. Maybe the first question is more of a factual one from Thomas Noll, and he asks, do renovation programs also cover or include historic buildings?
Yes, in principle now I recall that there are some exemptions in the way they should be covered. I'm happy to share with you some elements I had prepared for another event. The dynamics is that too often those historic buildings are seen as a reason to not do anything when actually there is already a good practice and they represent a good share of our buildings. And I know that at local level in a number of member states, this has been the topic for gathering new networks around what to do for historic buildings. So happy to further liaise on this topic, Thomas.
Thank you, Céline. Then we have a question from Mukund, I think from the Copper Institute, linked to the aligning of ambition. And he asked, could you explain the relevance of cost optimality as in enabling link number 1?
Okay, I would put 2 points here. So cost optimality was part of the second buildings revision in 2010-11. And it was meant to kickstart a number of action in countries to frame relevant standards, and it has a tremendous impact for helping derive energy performance and prepare the ground for near zero energy buildings. However, the question is whether the cost optimality tools as such is fit for longer term targets, so for climate neutrality and for buildings should deliver, and whether cost optimality cover enough of the multiple benefits that we know are very important. So this is a question and I'm very happy to listen to further feedback after this webinar.
Thank you, Céline. Again, on the enabling link number 1, aligning ambition, we have a question from Sanjeev Kumar. He's asking about what are priorities for 2030, and he's notably mentioning the target for energy efficiency, how to make the EED binding, and do we already have a list of amendments for EED and EPPD?
Oh, so the 2030 targets, it's probably not tuned with the overall 2050 trajectory. So we're going to have to revise targets. The level at which it should be set will be discussed in the next months. So I would say that we have been battling for 40%.
Céline, we can't.
You hear me here?
Yes. have lost you in our answer to Sanjeev.
Okay. So just a quick recap. So on the target, yes, we need to increase it and to be aligned with the potential, and to also make sure that the energy efficiency potential will deliver on the revamped global targets. We do not yet have specific amendments on EED and EPBD, but we know how they can be improved. We will fit into the process as and when. And on the EED binding target, I would say that the topic is not new. The realization of the benefits of energy efficiency is very important there. And the pitch will probably go together with the role energy renovation has to play with the economic recovery, I would say.
Thank you for that. Then coming to questions which are linked to the enabling link number 3, driving demand. We have a question from Monica from EuroACE. Do you have any evidence on how Energiesprong or Energie Positive really work?
Okay, so on how Energiesprong work, yes, we do have some evidence. From what I know, it's a very promising concept, and it has emerged in an ecosystem, if I may say, where social housing organizations were able to welcome and to work with such a concept. I know that it is being explored in other markets. What we do not yet have is the scalability mechanism for Energiesprong. And I also know that the cost curve and the reduction of the cost further work. But it's one interesting arena to work further. But it's one of the enabling factors is this industrialized renovation. I would not consider the only one.
Yes, and then continuing in this point, taking a question from Marion from RAP. She's asking, building on Monica's point, should we ask the Commission to look into the large-scale renovation business models and publish an assessment of those, including the financial information?
Yes, I believe this is probably the direction in which we should go to with the renovation open platform. Is that this is core now that we understand the dynamics of those business models and where they work in each segment, and we need to access the management of knowledge in this field.
Thank you, Céline. And then coming to questions about linking renovation with other initiatives or other policy arenas. A question from Stéphane Arditi, and he asks, can we target decarbonization of building beyond energy efficiency minimum requirements to unleash potentials for circular economy potentials?
This is definitely an aspiration that circular economy and building renovation work together. The question is also a matter of phasing in instruments and tools that we have. We know how to assess the energy performance of a building. For circularity, we will need to look into all the tools. The circular economics can be best integrated for new build, probably for major renovation. Whether we can link the two in short term, I'm not sure, because of how spread and how diverse our renovations markets are. And we need to create tools and data to understand the respective impacts.
Thank you, Céline. Another question in this same area from Oliver Jung from the European Heat Pump Association. And he says, to the policy ecosystem, it should be useful to add the comprehensive assessments on efficient heating and cooling due under EED that will have to be delivered this year by member states. And he adds, an other interesting link to make would be with the energy system integration strategy expected before summer.
Okay, so I try to turn this into equation because it's rather of a comment. Yes, for sure. I mean, this element will be looked at. I would, yes, under the EED. When it comes to renovation wave, I think that it has to be placed into the box of tools and instruments we can use. I would remind the interaction of this dimension with the energy efficiency first, which need to be in place.
Thank you, Celine. Then we have a question from Fiona Riddock, and she is and the private sector delivering enough innovation and new attractive products in the renovation market?
The innovation and attractive product, so that's the dynamic is definitely there. Investment in research, there is streams. Whether it's enough, I'm not sure if, we need to make sure that what is there can be mainstream in the market. And for that, we need a number of building blocks that I have described to work better together. There is lots of innovation, for example, for deep renovation, but probably thought as single measures and not necessarily as integrated holistic renovation. So this is where we need to focus the effort to understand how innovative measures and products and solutions work with each other.
Thank you, Celine. And then I have a question from Laura. Should deep renovation still be the focus of the renovation for EuroACE?
This is definitely still worth focusing on. We know, as I have mentioned, that the deep renovation in Europe is far too low, so 0.2% of the surface each year. And this is not going to make us be on track with the long-term decarbonization goals in the sector. And the risk we have if we do not keep enough focus on deep renovation is that we have to do building twice between now and 2050. Now, this is not the only focus. Deep renovation needs to be increased together with the rate of renovation. And as I was mentioning, we also need to design tools that are pragmatic and realistic enough. So obviously, a deep renovation in one go is always the best way, and it also limits the disruption of the works, for example. But we have to consider that most of the measures are undertaken in a step-by-step way. It has to do with finance. It has to do with how people plan their work, and the best way forward is to make sure that those different steps are coordinated to deliver overall deep renovation.
Thank you, Celine. And we have 1 minute left, so I'm just going to take the last question from Sanjeev Kumar again. And he's asking, would we support an EU list of the total number of energy use per building and per member state to measure the effectiveness of policy and renovation?
If that would be available, that would probably be very useful. But then the link with data availability will be.
Thank you, Celine. I see it's now almost 10:30, which is the end of our webinar. Celine, for and to the questions. Thank you to the participants also to ask so many questions. I see they're still coming, so we will to respond by writing. And now I pass back the floor to Julie for the final words of conclusion.
Yes, thank you from my end as well, to Celine for doing the presentation, and to all of you for listening in. And I think in conclusion, we can say that the renovation wave can help create important enabling links within the overall renovation ecosystem. And Celine centered those around 4 parameters on the call today. So aligning ambitions, driving scalability, driving demand, and integrating skills. So I take it from the questions and the comments on the call as well that there is, first of all, of course, an appetite to discuss what's happening in 2030. And I think, as Celine said, it goes without saying we need more ambition here, but we need to work together, perhaps, on how exactly we would like to see that path forward. Then today we focused on the renovation wave and the renovation ecosystem, but there are quite a few comments about how we also need to tie this even more broadly within the sort of energy ecosystem. So there were comments about smart sector integration, the heating and cooling plans, and the circular economy. And I think, again, all those are really important also for EuroACE, because the starting point for us is the energy efficiency of buildings. But the buildings, of course, are a key component of the overall energy system. And then the last question from Fiona Riddock on manufacturers and private sector delivering enough innovation struck me, because that, of course, is a question to us as sort of corporate members of EuroACE, and it's also similar to a question that was brought up in a second webinar. And I think on that, the answer from my end is yes, but also what I'm hearing here is we need to be even more to the fore in terms of explaining to policymakers and influencers, but also to the market in general, what these products are and how to best use them. So today we finished our little mini innovation wave. Thank you very much. I think some of you have actually been with us for all 3 seminars, so we must be doing something right. We for sure have picked up a lot of experience from these webinars, built in a survey, and thank you for that. I think it's going to be circulated again post this call, and we will be back after Easter with more online seminars. So watch your inboxes, our social media channels, and have a lovely Friday. Thank you.